Happy New Year from the West Coast Bias. I'm Andrew Nemec, joined as always by Jason Suke and Nemec. Suke, Final Four.
More importantly, nice Niner hat.
Thank you. It's a big
Yeah,
weekend for us.
it is a big weekend for you. So I saw that's old school too. Is that like from like 1984?
It's supposed to
That's
be like a retro vintage thing. My stepson got it for me for
yeah.
I think my birthday in April. I've worn it a bunch of times on the show. I just
Have
normally
you?
wear a hat. I wear a hat backwards, so you haven't seen it.
Ah,
But this is
oh,
my
you're back
go-to. This is my go-to hat right now.
somewhere. Colin Coward is disgusted with you. No, you got a big one coming up with the. I mean, that's potential game of the year stuff. So, yeah, um, jumping into it like sorry I'm just thinking 49ers Seahawks because like I'm doing my show today, so I'm in full like see I had a buddy just call me and he's going down to the Niner game, so it's like I
Yeah,
got Niners
huge.
Seahawks stuff on my mind. But yeah, it was a great weekend of college football, and now we're kind of back. This is I'm back in the normal swing of things now. No more holidays, back doing the normal show. Everything's back, so it's like I'm having to readjust from the last like 10 days of just eating whatever I want, drinking whatever I want, having no bedtime, all of that stuff, to now like back into like real work mode, if this is considered work.
Look at my eyes right now, man. I've gone like 10 days of vacation and drinking and snowmobiling and all that stuff. And now I come back to this and I'm just like, oh my God, what time is it? Oh, it's 9 o'clock. I think I'll be okay.
Well, that's
I need to adjust as well.
well, that was like Lanning was talking in his post game press conference, and I talked to him I don't know, a couple days before the Orange Bowl, before they were getting ready to go down there, and he just kind of said that they're not doing holidays. I asked him about kind of the sacrifices you make, and I said it's got to be tough, like being a coach, and he said he's a psycho, in a the most endearing way, but he's a psycho. He says, well, like my family knows that we'll celebrate the holidays after this. So
Ain't
he
no
just
Christmas in college football. Ain't no Christmas.
no, and I know it was at Carson Beck that was catching some. I don't know if he was catching flack, but Carson Beck was basically saying, they're in the facility 12 hours a day, and you had another person saying that they take only online classes so that they can stay in the film room all day, and then say, well, that's not what college is about, and these kids are missing out. But those days are all gone. Everyone's getting paid a lot of money. You got millionaires on the field, certainly millionaires off the field. And it's true, no one gives two craps about Christmas right now. There is a mission at hand, and you're down to the Final Four, and you're one of those Final Four teams. And something tells me that Dan Lanning might sacrifice some family Christmas time in order to win a national championship. So
It's a fascinating year, in part because I think some of the NIL stuff and some of the just legal paying of players is now
yeah,
spreading out the talent. And we saw that. I've said that in the recruiting rankings now for a number of years, that the SEC used to have 7 5-stars going to Georgia, 6 going to Alabama, LSU get 1 or 2, and that was it. And now they kind of each get their 2.
yeah.
And we're seeing that there's a lack of depth, and yet they're not as loaded. They're not as dominant. And that's what leads to, in part, this. And, some teams have handled it well from outside the SEC and loaded up on talent. And that's where we see a Final Four that, yes, has an SEC team, but not the one you'd expect, and not the one Lane Kiffin would expect probably. In
No, I mean,
Miami against Ole Miss and Oregon against Indiana, none of those teams are a championship team within the last 10 to 15 years. Miami had one of the greatest teams ever in the early 2000s, 2002 season. But anybody outside of Miami winning this, and again, it'll be Miami's back if they do, anybody else, and it'll say the first true NIL juggernaut. And whether that's Miami, or excuse me, whether that's Ole Miss or Oregon or Indiana, that's the way it's going to be framed. The first team that really capitalized on NIL and the transfer portal to elevate their program a tier, or in Indiana's case, like 7 tiers.
yeah. Well, I mean, Miami, believe it or not, Miami's never won the ACC. I mean, I know Miami in name is a big deal, but this is like if Nebraska were to do it. Miami's never won the ACC ever.
That's
They
wild.
win it this year. They win this year, and it's not a big school. It doesn't have a giant NIL budget. I mean, people kind of forget when Cristobal took that job. I mean, and that was more of a school pride thing. Oregon's a better job than Miami, way better resources. So I mean, I look all the credit in the world to Cristobal for getting here. But yeah, I mean, you could make the case that there's 2 big Cinderellas because Indiana and Ole Miss under the old system, under no circumstances should be here. Oregon has been a 25 or 30-year climb towards this, and certainly they're able to kind of elevate in the NIL world. And then Miami is kind of making good on the I don't know, sins of the past, no longer being sins. So I just think it's a fascinating world. I also think that when you look at the talent profile, the only one of these teams that really has that national title talent profile is Oregon. Miami is kind of on the cusp of it. Indiana certainly doesn't. Ole Miss doesn't. So when you look at traditionally the history of college football, the team that wins has a certain talent profile, and Oregon's really the only one that fits that mold. And I don't know whether or not Oregon wins it or not. I don't think this is a great Oregon team. I think it's a good Oregon team. If Oregon wins the national title, I mean, it will be, but this to me isn't their best team. It's their most talented on paper team, but I don't think it's their best team. But this is just the world we're living in. And we talked about this, that Oregon got a real favorable draw. When you looked at JMU, I think you looked at Texas Tech. That game, by the way, and I know we'll get into it, that game went about exactly as I thought it would go. I think I expected Texas Tech to be able to do a little bit more, but that is the game that I expected. I think I had it, like 21-17 or 21-14. I just didn't give Oregon's defense enough credit, or I gave Texas Tech's offense maybe a little credit.
Was the over-under actually 52? Did that
like
get
that,
published correctly?
And if you did
I
that,
thought I
were
saw it and was like, that's 20 points too high. Anyway.
Texas Tech was a bad offensive team. I tried telling everyone that would listen that. But I also said
we talked about it.
Yeah. So that was one of those that came out the way I thought it would. But then on the other side of things, the two teams I thought were the two best teams in the tournament, which is why I thought Oregon caught a nice break. I thought the two best teams in college football were on the other side of the bracket, and both of those teams are gone.
Right.
Georgia's gone and Ohio State's gone. I mean, in this world of supposedly diversified talent, Ohio State had a juggernaut. Depending on who you look at, they had 8 to 10 players on the top 100 draftable players. I mean, and that's like without Jeremiah Smith,
right?
Who's not draft eligible. So like that was the team that I thought was gonna kind of turn it on and be the super team, and they couldn't get out of the first round. And then that goes to the whole other narrative. Do we have to talk about now? I mean, only one team in 2 years has managed to avoid the curse of the bye, and that was that damn Indiana Hoosier team, which I know Duck fan won't like to hear it, but I just love. I love Indiana. I love what Signetti's doing. I find the whole thing awesome. And I understand, kind of where we're at. And I mean, I do my show on the home of the Ducks, and so you can't say this because you have to root for the local team. But I don't have a dog in any fight. I try to be very partial. And while it would be amazing, my gal, my missus went to Oregon, and so to see Oregon win would be incredible for that fan base. But if you take any local sentiment out, I don't know how you don't root for Indiana. I don't know how you don't root for Signetti. It's the single greatest.
The nation's going to be rooting for Indiana. Yeah.
That it's the single greatest. Urban Meyer said this after they beat Ohio State, and I agreed with it then. And he just keeps planting more flags. It is the single greatest coaching job in college football history. And I don't know if it can continue, because again, from a talent standpoint and a profile, Cinderella, college football does not abide Cinderellas. It just doesn't. I mean, you get the TCUs of the world eventually run into a buzzsaw. Washington eventually runs into a buzzsaw. And so you keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, and maybe it'll drop with Oregon and Indiana. But Indiana's already proven that they can go into Oregon's house and beat them. So I'm really excited for this for this matchup. I think there's some really great storylines in this Final Four, and it's not the four teams that we thought were going to be here. But I'm all for it. I think this is going to be great. And I like that we have some new blood. I like that it's not Ohio State, Georgia, and Notre Dame. I love that we have four teams here, and the only one, I mean, Miami and Oregon aren't necessarily new blood, but they're newer blood. And I'm here for it. It's great storylines.
I think we need to recalibrate now that we're down to a Final Four. The way that we evaluate teams is different. Clemson, everybody picked them to be good because they had the most returning starters. Well, it turns out in the transfer portal era, returning starters ain't necessarily it, because you can go get a better player. So that whole marker of who's going to be good, let's go by returning starters, that doesn't work anymore. You can't do that anymore. And then you look at these four teams, and what do they have? Everyone had a flaw. Georgia had a flaw. Ohio State had a flaw. My personal belief was that Oregon's flaws stacked up really poorly to Ohio State and Georgia. But everybody else in this tournament, they can hang with and potentially beat. People forget that Indiana game because it was a 10-point game and it was at Autzen. People think Indiana handed it to Oregon. That game was tied with 6 minutes and 40 seconds left. There's 6 minutes and 47 seconds left. So it was 20-20 in the fourth quarter. That was a good football game. And Oregon played a C- football game. They didn't execute well. Their game plan was vanilla. It was very much like the second half against Texas Tech, to be honest, except they didn't have the lead. So I think they thought they would wear down Indiana and it would go that way. I think the other marker, so we used to say returning starters. That's a staple of whether you're going to be good. I don't think that's the case anymore. The other one is look at transfer portal class. How good is your transfer portal class? Those teams started something like the top 4 or 5 transfer portal class rankings. They started the year 26-0, 24-0. So your transfer portal ranking is going to matter. And then we need to recalibrate from top-end talent, which absolutely matters, to depth. Depth matters now because your guys hit the portal. And what have we said about this Oregon team all year? They're really deep. What have we said about Indiana? They're really well coached. And sometimes you can account for some of your depth by just being really well coached. You're so buttoned up and you stay healthy. That's huge. But you're so buttoned up that your second string and third string guys can just rotate in and be good. We've talked about that with Oregon. We've talked about that with Indiana. And I think we're having to recalibrate a little bit the way that we look at what makes an elite team. And to transition that into this Oregon game, one of the things I said going into the playoffs was I think that we're missing Oregon's elite skill, and that's they can win any way, and they're comfortable winning any way. They won a shootout against James Madison, spare me the 500 yards. They rotated guys out. It was second and third string guys. They didn't want to get anybody hurt. I never believed that Oregon's defense was in trouble because of that James Madison game. Not for 1 second did I believe it was an issue. This game against Texas Tech, the defense – that video, the us versus them on the way that Dan Lanning talks to the defense this week, it's going to be an all-timer because he's going to be like, they don't believe in you. They think you're – but we talked about it. Texas Tech relies on the big play. They score. They capitalize off turnovers because their defense is so good, and they play in a crappy conference. So they wear teams down, and then they hang up a bunch of points on you. Well, go look at their schedule, and I didn't just mean who they played. Go look at some of their games. It was 7-6 against BYU at halftime. They struggled with Kansas State. They had 4 or 5. They struggled with Arizona State. They had 4 or 5 Big 12 games where they were up something like 14-10, 7-6 at halftime. And then the dam broke. It was never a good offense. So I'm sure watching film, Lanning and company went, oh, my God. They are not as good as people think, which is where you and I were. And maybe Texas Tech scores once or twice. But as long as Oregon can move the ball at all, they're going to win this game. And sure enough, the best defensive performance in Oregon Bowl history, people do erase that 2002 Fiesta Bowl where everyone thought Colorado's run game was an absolute juggernaut that could stop anybody. They played Nebraska in the Big 12 title game and put up like 63 points on them. And they were unbelievable, and Oregon just shut them down. Steve Smith had 3 picks in that game once they had to throw. Joey Harrington threw 4 touchdown passes. People remember that long one to Sammy Parker to start the game. But they still gave up points. I think they gave up 16 points in that game. This is the best Oregon defensive performance in their bowl history. Brandon Finney, who we've talked about all year, there's a clip from you saying this dude's enjoy him for now because he's only going to be here 2 more years. He's going pro as a junior. They dominated. They absolutely dominated. And I wish I could have seen the all-22 or some sort of sky cam for this game the whole way through. I just missed that during the Oregon game, that was potentially a possibility, I guess, or you could watch the highlights of it that way. Because I don't think their quarterback, Texas Tech's quarterback, Martin, was that bad. He wasn't good. I think Oregon absolutely blanketed their receivers. I don't think they had a guy that was athletic enough to get open against Oregon's really good secondary. They were buttoned up, and they absolutely dominated and then seemed to just run the clock out in the second half. It was the most uninspired offensive performance in the second half from Will Stein in that offense I think I've ever seen. But I think they knew they had him, and why risk it? Let's run the ball and punt and come home with a win.
Well, and they couldn't handle Texas Tech's front either. I mean, it's just that was one of those I think Lanning realized, and which is why I think I was a little surprised that he wasn't taking threes. But I also
as was I.
But I also thought that he had no fear whatsoever from their offense. And I did go and look, and Morton played really bad, but I don't think he was a good quarterback. I mean, anyone that thought Texas Tech was going to win, we did a preview show. It was me, Andy Johnson, and Anthony Newman, and we did a preview show on Wednesday. And people were, oh, what do you think? And I said, you can boil this down 1,000 different ways, but if the NFL, teaches us anything, when we're talking about interesting matchups, right? And we're like, well, strength on strength, and what do we do here? What's the ultimate X factor in any football game? It's quarterback play. And I said, I think you have a guy in Dante Moore that when he comes out, I think is going to be the number 1, if not number 2 or 3 pick in the draft. And I think you have a guy in Baron Morton that's getting ready to play his last meaningful game of all time. Mm-hmm. And I thought that spoke volumes. Yes, I think there were times where Oregon blanketed them. I thought early on in the game, in the 2 third downs that they didn't get at the beginning, he had check downs that were open. I thought there were a couple times with balls down the seam that he should have let go. But there was one that Dante Moore had to Sadiq, where I think if he rips it over the middle, there may be a touchdown there, but he had a guy in his face and decided not to throw it. The first interception they threw, and dude, I'm taking nothing away from Brendan Finney. I think that guy is going to be a first-round pick. I think he's going to be a top 15 pick in 2 years. And the first play that he made was incredible. But again, what are you doing throwing that ball? There was no separation there, and Morton tried to squeeze one in.
But I think he was just frustrated because there was no separation most of the game.
Yeah, the one into the end zone, and this is what he showed on film a lot, is he decides where to go with the ball, and the coverage be damned. And his receiver did him no, so they were running a little kind of 3-by look there into the end zone, and that outside receiver Finney had man coverage on the outside receiver, and the outside receiver stopped. Like, go watch it. He ran like 2 steps and just stopped. Like, I'm assuming he was supposed to run Finney off there to try to clear out that corner. And this is where Finney's just being a smart player. The moment he saw his receiver basically stop, he just backed up. So Oregon had 3 back there. It was kind of a little 3-on-3. And his receiver kind of took like 2 steps in and just stopped and was standing in front of the other, the inside nickel corner. So Finney just backed up, and Morton just, not only did he
threw it anyway,
threw it anyways. I mean, my God, like, it wasn't like he backed up and then, like as Morton was throwing it, Finney just started backing up, and Morton didn't see it. Not only did he throw it, but he threw it short. Again, if you're going to,
the only place you can't throw that ball, right?
So he just was really bad all game. And
he was.
I thought Texas Tech's game plan was wonky. That's a team all year that had been willing to just throw arm punts and throw go balls. I mean, their offense has largely been screen passes and go balls, and I think both of those things. So I don't know. I don't know how much of the rust factor. I don't know how much they were scared with Oregon. They didn't run the ball very effectively. I thought their pass protection was okay. I didn't think it was great, but again, I thought Morton had really poor pocket presence on the Tuioti strip sack, step up into the pocket. I thought Texas Tech's O-line played good enough, but Oregon just swallowed them. They never got anything going, with the exception of the one big play where Betcher missed the tackle and 20 bounced it out for Texas Tech. Other than that, there was no threat whatsoever. It really, as that game wore on, it just felt like you said that Texas Tech just had nothing to offer. And maybe that was just one of those, they hadn't seen anything quite like Oregon. And I don't think Oregon's front is like Texas Tech's front, but that's an NFL front.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think that sometimes we do a disservice. Yes, I'm sitting here saying that Texas Tech played poorly on offense, and I didn't think Texas Tech, neither one of us thought Texas Tech had a good offense. But for all the love that we're going to get Texas Tech's defense, and rightfully so, that thing was as advertised, and they strangled Oregon. And had Texas Tech had an offense, Oregon was in real trouble because they weren't doing crap against that Texas Tech front. They couldn't block them. But let's also give credit where credit's due. If Oregon wins a national championship this year, it will be because of their defense. They beat Penn State because of their defense. They beat Iowa because of their defense. Like this defense is what will carry them to it. And Tuioti is an NFL guy. Now, these aren't first round guys, but Tuioti is an NFL guy. Uyunglele is an NFL guy.
And it was Uyunglele that had that strip sack, by the way.
Was it Uy? I thought it was Tuioti.
It was Mateo who got it. Young Kong. Remember, they started calling him Young Concrete. That's when they did that whole thing. And they got it down to like the 6th. But Tuioti had a couple big sacks, including an 18-yard loss on 3rd and 2.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. I thought Tuioti had that play, but so you have and Amari Washington is an NFL guy. So you have three guys.
Bear Alexander's an NFL guy. He's not a super high NFL guy, but he's an NFL guy.
You have 4 NFL defensive linemen, right? Bryce Betcher will play in the NFL. Again, where's he at? I don't know, but that's an NFL guy. Brandon Finney is an NFL guy. Thieneman is an NFL guy. So Kennedy's
going to have a place.
Kennedy is an NFL guy. So, for this defense, I just think largely we just haven't paid a lot of attention to it this year. And I don't know, it's time to give him credit. Yes, it was against a crappy offense, but it was a shutout. I don't care who you're playing. It's hard to shut people out and to look that dominant. And at no point did it feel like Texas Tech's offense had anything going. And, the one drive they had where they finally threw the ball downfield, and that was what led to the Finney interception in the end zone on the short arm throw there. It was like, finally, hey, look, Texas Tech, try throwing the ball downfield. Look, you had some success. And Oregon snuffed it out. So I just, I can be critical of what two things can be true at the same time. Texas Tech's offense is not very good. It wasn't very good. We didn't think it was very good. Tried to tell everyone it wasn't very good. And Oregon's defense is really, really good. Two things can be true at the same time. And when you get bad offense with good defense and you mush those things together, you get a shutout and a putrid performance from Texas Tech's offense and a defense right now, if you're Oregon, that you feel can carry you at this point. I feel like Oregon feels like that defense can carry into a national title, and I totally see why.
Yeah. I think we said early in the year, and we both weren't really believers in this team as a national title contender. One, I didn't expect there to be no juggernaut. This is a wide open year where I do believe 11 or 12 teams that things broken differently could have won. Could have won a game or two in the playoffs. I believe that. I don't, as bad as people thought James Madison was, and I don't think they would have beat Texas Tech because it comes down to it. James Madison would have had to block Texas Tech too. But there are a bunch of teams in this thing that could have won, again, outside of like the James Madisons, that could have won a couple different games with the right matchup. This is a really interesting year. And the other thing we said, and so I think that part proved wrong, that this is a national title or this isn't a national title Oregon team. Turns out it is. The other thing we said is Oregon's going to be a whole lot better come playoff time if they make it than they are in September. Because they have a whole bunch of young guys. And you can go through the whole thing. Bear is coming back. Tuiyoti's a junior. Mateo Uiagalelei is a good football player. That highlight was really nice. He's had like multi-game stretches where he's disappeared this year. He went from being a first-round pick with a bullet to now, I think it was Bruce Feldman that said, it'll be interesting to see if he it'll be interesting to see if he comes back because he's clearly now a day 2 guy. He's good. Yeah. He's a day 2 guy. And that's, second or third round. So he could potentially come back. Thieneman is a junior, but he's probably gone, I would guess. I don't know that he can help his stock much more. He's a high day 2. Finney is a freshman. Aaron Flowers has had moments. He's young. They've got so many. Jerry Mixon is really getting in there for the first time. They've got so many young players. And then you go to the offensive side, and this was Dante, and we don't think of it this way anymore, but this was Dante's first year starting for Oregon's offense. Like, he's come a long way to the point that now he looks like the number 1 or number 2 pick. The running backs had a rough day, this week, but the running backs, it was a couple of those guys' first ever college carry. DeCorian Moore hadn't played, period. We hadn't seen Sadiq be a true alpha receiver. In fact, his leading receiving game in college up to that point was like 4 catches for 54 yards. Now he's a dude. They're much better. Malik Benson was an unknown. This team is so much better, not only than they were at the beginning of the year, but this is kind of where I'm going with this. They're a lot better than the team that played Indiana. They're a lot better. They're better on defense. They know who they are. They trust their secondary to the point that now they're doing a few more things up front. And then offensively, whereas I still think, and you can go back and listen to those pods, and I did around that time, we were still like, we don't like the running back rotation. Who's the guy? We still don't know. Outside of DeCorian Moore, can Sadiq be an alpha receiver? Who is it outside of Moore that's going to be a big-time playmaker? Well, the answer is Benson. And Gary Bryant Jr. underneath can make plays. Johnson hadn't emerged yet at all. We didn't even mention Johnson like the first month of the pod. They are so much better than they were and so much deeper than they were. And that's the other thing I didn't give this Oregon team. We said it. I don't think we gave it enough credit. They're like a tier and a half to 2 tiers better than they were in September. The problem was they weren't playing anybody. So it looked like they were the juggernaut they later became to be because they were playing Oregon State and Oklahoma State. But this Oregon team is much better than the team that played Indiana. And I am fascinated because I do think Oregon beats Indiana. I do. I think it's going to be a good football game. I'm not taking anything away from Indiana. Mendoza's been great. They've got that trio of receivers with Surratt and Cooper, and now the emergence of Charlie Becker, who's kind of wide receiver one for him here the last 6 weeks of the season.
Big touchdown catch at the beginning of that game. Went up and elevated, and he's been really good for them.
Indiana's really good, but when Oregon played them, they were still kind of an unknown. Now you've got more game film, and if you think Dan Lanning, the psycho, hasn't watched that film that Oregon played, when Oregon played them 50 times now, you're nuts.
Well, and that's the other thing.
Oregon gets them, and I think the best two teams, if you're looking at it, if we're talking top 10 offense, top 10 defense, or however you want to say it, Miami might have the number one defense in the country. They do not have a top 10 offense. They don't.
Yeah.
You look at Ole Miss. Ole Miss is good. I think they're top 25 in both, and I think the bracket broke right, and they won. So good, but I don't consider them, and maybe they'll win it because it's a weird year. But I don't think Lane Kiffin wouldn't have left if he thought he had a juggernaut on his hands. I think he's probably surprised they're here. Indiana has a top 10 offense, a top 10 defense. Oregon has a top 10 offense, top 10 defense. The team that wins that Indiana-Oregon game, if they don't beat the hell out of each other, will be the favorite in the national title game.
Yeah, and I when we were kind of previewing and we were looking at the bracket and where this was going, I'm not going to pick Oregon to beat Indiana because I'm done doubting Indiana. Just am. Indiana, to me, I love what Indiana's doing, and prove it. Can Oregon beat Indiana? Absolutely. But Indiana went into your house, and I thought they were better than you in all three phases. And yes, they're down their best defensive lineman, and that certainly hurts. And Indiana does not have the depth that Oregon has, and those injuries will certainly affect Indiana more than Oregon losing one guy. And maybe this is the inverse of last year when Oregon beat Ohio State in a close game, and then in the playoff they turned around and absolutely got throttled. So maybe Oregon throttles Indiana, but I'm just done doubting Indiana. But this is where I think if you like Oregon in this game, I mentioned when you look at the bracket and how it breaks, I thought Dante Moore and got confused. I think when you look at what Indiana does, Indiana is so buttoned up, and what they do with their exotic pressures. I think they're the best in the country at their rotational safeties and disguising what they do. And I think Dante Moore got confused. And I think Indiana does that to a lot of people. I think they did it to Julian Sand. I think they did it to Ty Simpson. Their defense makes you very uncomfortable, and there just isn't a lot of big things to be had there. And with the exception of the big turnover, I mean, remember that the reason Oregon got back in that game wasn't because their offense. What was it? It was because of their defense, right? Mm-hmm. So I do think that getting to see Indiana a second time and getting to and understanding a little bit of what Indiana does, and not having be the first time you see it. It's like anytime you see boxing, if you get to fight a guy a second time, it's going to be easier, right? It's going to be easier to figure it out. And hopefully, like you said, with Lanning and company and Dante Moore, a little more comfortable dealing with what Indiana is going to throw at you. So I do think that is a big advantage in Oregon's favor. I think the matchup favors Oregon because I don't think what Oregon does is anything fancy. I don't think Oregon offensively or defensively throws any sort of great scheme at you. In fact, defensively, I think they keep everything in front of you, and they are taking a little more chances now. You saw them work a few more pressures, but Oregon doesn't blitz a lot. They don't throw you a lot of exotic looks. They just kind of play a little bit of a boa constrictor type.
Our 11 is better than your 11 for 12 plays, and that's what it's going to take for you to get in the end zone.
Yeah, you're not going to beat us over the top. And, you know, it reminds me a little bit of Ohio State. Like you mentioned, you know, with Uyunglele and even Tuioti and these guys, they're not top 10 picks, but neither was Ohio State. When you look at Jack Sawyer and then was it
JT Tuimalau and all those guys. Yeah.
This reminds me of that, right? They kind of mush rush and just kind of squeeze you, and they tackle real well and keep stuff in front of you. And they kind of play just this, we're just going to blanket everything. We're just really good, right? 11 across the board. We tackle well and we rally to the ball. And, so I do think from a scheme standpoint, I think it favors Oregon because I think Indiana and their RPO game and the different coverages that Indiana runs, I think that is more scheme heavy than Oregon is. I think it's a little more complex, a little more wonky, whereas Oregon's like, hey, this is us, line up and stop it. So I think that favors Oregon in this matchup, getting to see them a second time. I'm just done doubting Signetti. I'm done doubting Indiana. Sure. I'm just so damn impressed. And the fact that they went into your house and I thought pushed Oregon around a little bit.
They did. Yeah.
So now Oregon gets a chance, right? They've only had that happen once all year. And so you get some redemption. You get a chance to prove that was a fluke. And certainly from a physical and athletic standpoint, Oregon's talent profile is significantly higher than Indiana's. Indiana should not be able to play with Oregon, but they've proved that they can. So I'm excited. I just think this is going to be a great game. And if Oregon wins a national title, it will not be because of their offense. If Oregon wins a national title, it would be because of this defense. And maybe that's fitting because when Dan Lanning came, Oregon's been able to score points forever and a lot of NFL guys on that side of the ball. And when Lanning came in, he said he was going to try to build an SEC team. And he's a defensive guy and won a defensive title being the defensive coordinator at Georgia. So maybe it's apropos that the first time that Oregon wins a national title is because they built a suffocating NFL defense. And this is a suffocating NFL defense that reminds me a lot of even the way they use Thieneman. And now I know he's not the same player, but they run this kind of 3 safety look, and Thieneman basically just gets to do whatever he wants. Is he a safety? Is he a linebacker?
Heaven, man. He's in safety heaven.
You know who that reminds me of? That's what Caleb Downs. That's what Ohio State. Yeah, that's what Ohio State does with Caleb Downs. Is he's the third safety. And it's like, hey, just go
have fun out there. Go have fun out there.
And so they're both of their ends remind me of that, and their secondary reminds me of it a little bit. So I just think it's time for me to give flowers to Oregon's defense. And we just don't, and I'm as guilty as anyone. I just haven't, I don't know, maybe it's just because the offense they've played, I just haven't talked about it enough, but I was just really impressed. And like I said, if they're going to get it done, I think it's that unit's going to lead it. And then, Dante Moore is enough. Even early on in that Texas Tech game, Moore showed you that even against an elite defense, there's throws to be made and he'll make them. Mm-hmm. I don't think he played a bad game by any stretch of the imagination. I just think they got overwhelmed. And if there is a weakness, and I think this is where we saw it a little bit, that Texas Tech front can make a lot of people look bad. And they made Oregon's O-line and run game look bad. I mean, you've said it, with Isaiah World and Harkey, these are not all world tackles. I thought Poncho and Pregnon probably played their worst game. I think some of the snap issues, was Poncho being a little scared when you have a guy that's over your nose and you're having to move a bunch. And I was a center, and I know this when you aren't used to bad, when this hasn't been a thing, and now all of a sudden bad snaps, it's because the center's moving too fast. The center's concerned about other things, and I think that front had them spooked. Pregnon, I think, is arguably their best player across the board. And I thought he got beat across his face multiple times. I just thought Texas Tech's front was too much for Oregon. The nice part is Miami's made. There's not many fronts that look like that. But that's the nice part is that, you play a team like that and you're like, my God, I don't think we can handle them up front. And how nice is it to play complimentary ball? We say, hey, you don't have to. It's all right. We're not going to give them anything. So, I mean, you give us 14 points and we're going to win this game. And my God, they could have given them 6 points and they would have won that game. Yeah. And 3 points. So I'm with you. I think you said it really well. You said, I think we started off the year thinking one thing, turned to another, and then went to other. And now we're back to, I think both of us think that this team is certainly capable of winning a national championship.
Yeah, it's been an interesting year. And I think the new normal with a Dan Lanning team with the blue chip ratio they have, we're not always going to know with the transfer portal and the recruiting classes. We're not always going to know where the talent's going to come from. But I'll give Dan Lanning this. One of his superpowers has been to recruit, whether it's the portal or high school ranks, guys who can help him right away and that he and his staff can elevate, right? Yeah. Like almost every guy they've brought in has improved. Derek Harmon, Christian Gonzalez became all-world guys. Emmanuel Pregnon left USC. He's supposed to be a first-round pick. Bear Alexander is in the cast-off category where people thought he was, done. Malik Benson, another one, cast-off character. Multiple stops, hadn't really done anything. Comes to Oregon, and you go, dude, this guy looks like a former 5-star recruit. Well, I got some news for you. He's done a phenomenal job with that. Even Jamari Johnson, whose time hasn't come yet because Kenyon Sadiq's there, he's going to be a superstar next year. Yep. He's going to be a Mackey finalist potentially as long as their offense stays relatively the same that gives tight ends opportunities. They've done a great job of that. So I think the new normal for us going into a year is I'm not sure where it's all going to come from, the production, the talent, who the pass catchers are going to be. In this case, what's going to happen with the secondary. They're starting a true freshman. You just almost in Lanning we trust, you have to trust that they went and got the guys because he's kind of added it to his resume, very much like Kirk Cignetti, who has found pieces and made it all work. And Kirk Herbstreit talked about that like they've got this collection, and some of them are from James Madison, and some of them are from Maryland, and some he brought in. They all fit their role. So I think when your blue chip ratio is at this level, when you recruit at the level they do, you bring in talent to fit your needs. We're going to have to go into every year, even if we're not sure, going, I mean, I guess if you get A+ production out of your freshmen, Oregon did this year. You do not get true freshmen like De'Aaron Hill, Jordan Davis, and Brandon Finney very many places. Like that many guys. Moore. Yeah, that many guys hitting. That means you're really good, and you've got a really good class. Their transfer portal class, Dylan Thieneman, Pregnon, Bear Alexander, Jamari Johnson, Malik Benson, Alex Harkey, Isaiah World. That's ridiculous levels of production. So going into any year from now on, if I go down the rabbit hole of like, well, I don't know how this team's going to piece it together, stop me and say, hey, they find places to plug and play talent. And I think that's the story of this season for Oregon, that this isn't the most loaded Oregon team ever in terms of where they are right now. If you hit the pause button right now, Oregon's had better teams in a matchup of this Oregon team. I think last year's Oregon team at their peak was better than this Oregon team, throughout portions of the season.
I agree.
They've come together. The young guys have stepped up, and now late in the year, they're really good. They know who they are. And I go back to this because it's very striking when you watch them. They've been in so many different kinds of football games, and they never seem panicked. The defense never seems, and you'll see it body language wise, you'll see a defense kind of like, guys, give us some points, come on. That never happens. The offense goes on a scoring binge, but they're in a shootout. You never think the offense never goes to the sideline and it cuts to, as the other team scores again, it cuts to Dante and he's like, stop somebody. They trust each other at a level that's really, and I don't mean this as like a brotherly love thing. I mean this from a football standpoint. They believe in their system. They believe in what they do, and they believe their talent will rise to the top, that no matter what kind of game they're in, they can win. And in this NIL era where there is no juggernaut and it comes down to strength on strength and taking advantage of weakness, Oregon might just have the least bad weakness in college football this year. What's their weakness? What's their big issue? It was kicking for a long time. Thank you, Atticus Sappington. What's Oregon's weakness? And so in a world where it used to all be about whoever's the juggernaut that just runs over people, sure, you have to be buttoned up and experienced and great everywhere. In the new NIL era, it might just come down to chess match of whose weakness is the least glaring. And honestly, if you look at the teams right now, Indiana or Oregon are the two teams where there's not a glaring weakness.
No, and the talent level at Oregon is greater than the talent level of Indiana.
Yes.
And so maybe that's the tipping point. Can Indiana keep doing this? Which is why I said I'm done doubting them. I won't pick Oregon to beat Indiana because I'm done doubting Indiana. But and that's just maybe me kind of being more stubborn, right? And just saying, hey, go prove it. But traditionally, forever, these stories don't happen. Cinderella doesn't happen in college football. It doesn't. And really, it doesn't happen in college basketball either. I mean, once in a while, I guess you do get Jimmy V and something like that.
Butler made back-to-back finals. That's as close as we get.
Yeah, it's as close as we get. But basketball is such a different thing because you can really scheme up basketball, and you run the Princeton offense and be all detailed in this. And people hate when I say this, but I mean, football. So much of it just comes down to, dude, am I a bigger badass than you are?
Yeah,
man. It's like there's a reason why I can't take a talented football player and then in 2 years make him an NBA player or make him a Major League Baseball player. It doesn't work. But I can find a washed out basketball player, and in 2 years I can make him an NFL All-Pro. Right? Athletes.
Antonio Gates.
Yes. Athletes win. Tony Gonzalez and and Jimmy Graham, and athletes win. They just in football, it matters. That's why college football has always been such a top heavy sport, that there's only been 4 or 5 teams that recruit well enough to do it. And maybe this is changing now. Like you said, maybe the talent dispersed, and maybe Indiana's just that weird of a team that's going to be able to rise up and do this. But TCU a couple years ago was such a cool story. And then they played Georgia, and
the worst bowl loss in history in any bowl game, the national championship.
It's just it's like whoops. And we point out Oklahoma and Boise State, but Boise State didn't have to go play someone after that, because when those teams traditionally play, when Hawaii played Georgia a couple years later with Colt Brennan, they got 60 hung on them. And when Oregon went and played Georgia in Dan Lanning's first game, and they got drilled because they didn't have enough lead in their ass to hold up. And so there is part of me that wonders, eventually does the foundation of what Signetti's doing in Indiana crumble? Is because eventually you reach a point where, dude, your athletes aren't as good as my athletes. And again, I'm done saying that that's going to happen, because they keep proving me wrong. But you do wonder in the back of my mind, or at least I do, that if is this finally the one where Oregon has seen you before, they've seen what you do on tape, you're not going to surprise them, Oregon's playing really well, and finally the difference in athletic profile comes out on a big stage and Oregon overwhelms Indiana, because Indiana got overwhelmed last year twice. I mean, this Indiana team is better than last year's team, but Indiana last year against Ohio State and Indiana against Notre Dame, right? They just were overwhelmed from a physical standpoint. And this year they have not been overwhelmed by anybody. And Ohio State is more talented than Oregon. They have more depth, but it's that sort of talent profile. And they managed to do it. And so that's what gives me pause and saying, well, maybe they're not going to get overwhelmed. Maybe this is just the one team that truly is special that isn't going to get overwhelmed. But I just think that's such an interesting juxtaposition going into this. Why I'm so excited for this game, and I'm glad we get to see it again. I'm glad that we get to see Oregon get a chance to erase the one blemish that they've had. And if Oregon does it, then, that just like, oh my God, then you're on the doorstep of program history. And if you're Indiana, you get another chance to prove that. And I think they probably relish it, because everyone probably, like, us, is like, well, Oregon, I bet you Oregon's favored in this game. And people are going to say like, well,
I think Indiana's favored by 3 or 4.
Did they say Indiana's favored?
I think Indiana's favored by 3 or 4.
Maybe finally people are waking up and respecting Indiana. It's just like, when Oregon when Washington beat Oregon 2 years ago, and then in the rematch where everyone was like, well, they beat them the one time, but Oregon's just that much talented. And and Washington got him again. That's kind of what we have here with Indiana. We get a chance to, what is it? You're playing horse, right? And, prove it. Hey, last shot, you're going to give me my last letter, prove it. And now Oregon gets to go tell Indiana to prove it again.
Whoever wins the Oregon-Indiana game, do you have fear that they could lose in the national title game? Do you think the winner of that game? Because I do. I don't think you can dismiss anyone. But no. I do think the winner of Oregon-Indiana probably deserves to beat a 5 to 7 point favorite in the title.
I think the two best teams left in the tournament are Oregon and Indiana. But my dumbass said that the two best teams in the tournament were Georgia and Ohio State, and neither one of them is playing. So honestly, and I don't know if this is a funky year. This is just our new world of college football. I don't know what to make of it. I don't know what to make of it anymore. I really don't. I think any team is capable. The one team that I would say, Ole Miss isn't winning it. They're just
I
not.
wouldn't think so. Yeah.
They're just not. Dude, you got 6 coaches that aren't even going to be coaching there. I mean, you have 6 LSU coaches inside that room. They don't have the talent profile. I still am kind of shocked that they managed to beat Georgia, but what a cool story. Yeah. That's the one that I have a hard time believing. If you told me Miami, Oregon, or Indiana won a national title, zero shock. Yeah. Miami's starting to look like the team we thought they were at the start of the year. And, they found a physical and a rough identity. Carson Beck may not be the greatest quarterback in the world, but he's not terrible. And their defense is good enough to strangle you out. I think they're kind of a poor man's version of what Oregon's running out there. So yeah, that wouldn't shock me at all. And certainly Oregon, Indiana, that would be the one. If Ole Miss and their talent profile with their situation and their coaching stuff, if they manage to do this, that would be the one where I would be like, that's unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable.
Give Kiffin his ring.
Yeah, that's just so bizarre to me, that whole thing. And again, that would kind of be a cool story for those kids at Ole Miss if they were to find a way to do it. That's just the one that I'm not buying. That's the only one.
One quick note before we get out of here: the transfer portal window is open. An interesting note locally and potentially with what we cover. Sam Levitt has entered the portal with a do not contact tag.
Yeah.
That means
he knows.
He knows where he's going.
Yeah.
So that's going to be fascinating to see, because there's a possibility that all the pieces are set up and Dante's about to leave and Sam Levitt becomes the quarterback at Oregon. I don't think that's out of the question. I've heard nothing. I've truly heard nothing. But I do think if Oregon needs a quarterback, that's how it's going to happen, right? Sure. Like a guy hits the portal and is like, don't contact me. I know where I'm headed. And we find out Dante declares the kid was in the portal. He was set to go to Oregon, but we never really heard that. It's just they back channeled it and figured it all out. Yeah. If Dante goes pro, I think that's how it's going to happen. So that's why I'm interested in the Sam Levitt thing. It's not because I've heard anything with Sam Levitt, but I do think it's something to put a pin in. And now watch, he'll end up at LSU with Kiffin, or he'll end up at Kentucky because he wants to work with Will Stein. I have no idea. I'm just saying it's interesting that a local kid that has been rumored twice now to be interested in Oregon and rumored to potentially hit the portal last year. He didn't. This year he did. Is in the portal with a do not contact tag.
Well, I'll tell Oregon fan this: win or lose, your team next year will be a better team than this version. The best version of Oregon is still coming. This is not, let's say Oregon makes a national title and falls short, right? We've seen this before where you make a national title, you fall short, and then it's like, hey, thanks for coming. Or you win a national title and you go away, see Auburn, right?
Right.
That's not this. This isn't a fluke. Washington, the year that they played for the national title, they had that great collection of guys that all ended up staying, and they put something special to the game. Michigan had that, right? When all those guys came back and they won it. That's not this. This is different. This is a team stacking year after year. And if Dante Moore comes back, I believe they will be the favorite to win the national title. Yep. If Dante Moore doesn't come back, they will not go with an unproven quarterback. I'll tell you that right now. It will be a transfer, like you said, Sam Levitt, or whether they do it Mestamaker or whatever. They will go get a portal kid. They will not turn the keys over to an unproven guy with this roster next year.
Well, it'd be Brock Thomas.
Yes.
It would be Brock Thomas right now, because
it's not.
Novacet's gone. That's not happening. I mean, it's
not happening. So this roster next year is going to be scary. Again, depending on who comes back, we'll see. But Poncho's coming back.
Bears coming back.
Bears coming back.
I don't think Tuiotti's leaving. I don't think so. Great the second half of the year, but I don't think he declares.
So so maybe both your, we'll see what happens with your, with your defensive line. But
Thieneman's the one I'm watching the most closely.
Yeah,
Thieneman's good. He's a safety. There's kind of a ceiling on how high you go as a safety, who's what he is. Does he come back for like $1.5 million? Or, I don't know, I'm making up the number. And just lead a defense and be a superstar? Because right now his stock is peaking, but his stock peaking is like a second or third round safety. So you can make that money playing in college. That'll be fascinating.
It will be a scary roster. If Dante Moore comes back next year, it will be a scary roster. So win or lose, just know next year's team, I think, is going to, because I thought this was kind of the precursor to next year.
I did too.
So whatever happens, I'm not saying you're playing with house money and you have an opportunity here, go finish the thing. But if it doesn't end the way you want it to end, just know next year there's a wagon coming back to Eugene. And if Dante Moore comes back, look out. And if he doesn't, like you said, get ready for a big transfer portal to come in, because they're primed to go. You look at it, Decorian, most of your best players are freshmen or second year players. Decorian, Moore, freshman. I know Sadiq's going to go. You have another NFL tight end waiting after him. Both of your backs, true freshmen. Your defense is loaded with young talent.
Your secondary, a whole bunch of freshmen and sophomore. And that's one of the best secondaries in the country.
Yeah. and your defensive line is going to be more intact than you think it's going to be. I don't think all those guys are going to go. You're going to find some linebacker. You mentioned, Mixon coming into starting to kind of come into his own. This team is going to be really, really good for years to come. So just, I've got some friends that are like, oh, I can't live in a world where Oregon wins a national title. And I'm like, eventually get ready. Cause it's just, this feels more like when Georgia and Clemson were stacking classes and stacking bodies and stacking NFL guys. This feels way more like that than a blip on the radar and in a team that, had a bunch of guys that stuck together for a couple of years and then kind of hit one magical year. That's not what this is.
Last year on Monday, so last December, 12 and a half months ago, I was asked what my big prediction was for Oregon. And I think they meant the class. Yeah. And I said, this class, I guarantee, makes a national championship game in the first 3 years. They just will. The blue chip percentage is too good. They're hitting the portal too well. They will make a national title game in 3 years. Well, they didn't last year, but they were undefeated in the regular season. This year, they're in the semis and they're right there. And next year's team is supposed to be the year. And people can say whatever they want. Jeff Schwartz has tweeted this too. Oregon thought next year was their year. Like they were prepared for Moore to go through his lumps. I don't think they expected him to be the number 1 or number 2 pick right away. I mean, I think they thought he could get that, but they weren't projecting like, oh, he's going to be one and done and be the number 1 pick. Nobody projects that. They thought they were stacking for next year, and it just turned out they're ready to go. And in the world of college football, when your time comes, capitalize. And so I think internally they've gone, okay, we shift it. We shift all our chips are in. We're sitting at the Final Four. We'll see what happens. But I do think internally they thought, and now things have changed, but at the beginning of this year, we're going to be really good this year. Next year's our year. And I think this year could be our year. Next year could be our year. Our year meaning that's the way they see it. And I think going forward, Dan Lanning and his staff are going to say, this is our year every year because they've got the talent on the roster.
It's got the profile look to it, 100%.
Well, thank you for listening to the West Coast Bias. Subscribe, like, do the whole thing wherever you get your podcast. Leave comments on YouTube. We'll try to address those as we can. And we're gonna tape. This is a weird Friday taping because we just got through quarterfinal action. We're gonna tape again either Monday or Tuesday and give you guys a podcast talking about the semifinals, the state of college football, some early portal news. And remember, this will be a year-round show. So when the college football season ends, we're going to get into draft talk. We'll get into portal talk. We'll do deeper dive stuff on interesting topics we like around the world of college football, and we'll get more big picture. But year-round, and we're here for you. So thank you for listening. Thank you for sticking with us through the Final Four. We've got a really exciting here. Next 3 games left in the college football world that matter. I think there's a bowl game or 2 left or something, but 3 real meaningful college football games left, and Oregon might be in 2 of them. So that'll be fascinating. Thanks, Suke.